My dad paid for my stepmom's daughter's wedding dress but criticized my body in the bridal shop, then laughed when I cried in the changing room. Maybe we should look for something that hides your hips, he said, like he wasn't the one who raised me. Me 28 female was dress shopping for my wedding when my dad 58 male walked into the boutique uninvited and, while I stood there in a dress I loved, looked me up and down and said, maybe we should look for something that hides your hips. Then he laughed. Loudly. In front of my stepsister, Violet 27 female, and her mom, my stepmom, Rena. What hurt even more? Just a few weeks earlier, he happily bought Violet's dream wedding dress and gushed about how she was the most beautiful bride. When I cried in the changing room, no one followed me. Not even him. That was the day I decided I didn't want him at my wedding. So, your dad really said that? About your hips? My fiancé Milo asked me that night, his voice gentle, eyes wide with disbelief. I nodded, still trying to process it all. And then he laughed. Like I was a joke. Like I wasn't standing there in a dress I loved, feeling brave just to try it on in front of him. He wrapped his arm around my shoulder, rubbing slow circles on my back. Kala. I'm so sorry. I haven't written this out until now, because honestly, it's still raw. But after going back and forth in my head, trying to decide if I was overreacting, if I was being dramatic, if I owed my dad something, I just want to put it out there. Maybe someone else has had a similar experience. Maybe you've also stood in a dressing room, crying in a wedding gown, wondering when your father stopped seeing you. Here's what happened in full. My parents divorced when I was 12. I was raised in Missoula, Montana, and when the divorce papers were signed, my mom packed up and moved back to Spokane. She said she couldn't stay in a town where every street reminded her of what went wrong. She said I'd come live with her soon. But that didn't happen. I stayed with my dad, Max, because he had the house and the job, and in the eyes of the court, that meant stability. I was quiet as a kid. Polite. Never really caused problems. My dad wasn't mean, at least not at first. He was just absent. The kind of dad who'd forget picture day until you were already out the door in a hoodie and jeans. The kind of dad who'd come to school concerts but spend the whole time on his phone. When I was 15, he met Rena at a trade show in Boise. She was different. Assertive. Always smiling, but there was a sharpness underneath. The kind of person who makes sure everyone knows when she enters a room. She had a daughter, Violet, who was a year younger than me. Blonde, petite, peppy in a cheerleader on a caffeine high kind of way. Within months, they were engaged, and not long after, they moved in. Our house didn't feel like mine anymore. Rena reorganized everything, the kitchen, the linen closet, even the family photos on the wall. And slowly, things shifted. Violet started calling my dad Dad before the year ended. He didn't flinch. I stopped calling him Daddy around then, too. Somehow, the word started to taste bitter. I made it through high school, then college in Helena. I saw my dad less and less, and eventually, our communication dwindled to holiday texts and occasional birthday calls. He was always busy with Violet's latest event, college graduation, internships, her engagement. He was present for all of it. In a way I don't remember him ever being for me. When I got engaged to Milo, I didn't expect much from my dad. I'd learned not to. But a part of me still hoped he'd show up. Just once. I'd been planning a quiet wedding in Glacier National Park. Something intimate, personal. Nature all around. It felt like me. Violet, meanwhile, was planning a huge, glittery blowout at a waterfront venue in Coeur d'Alene. Our weddings were a month apart. Then one day, a photo popped up on my feed, Violet standing on a pedestal in a bridal boutique, beaming in a dress that probably cost more than my car. My dad stood beside her, looking proud, smiling like she was his pride and joy. The caption read, "Said yes to the dress." Thank you, Dad, for making my bridal dreams come true. I stared at it for a long time. I hadn't even asked him to pay for my dress. I wouldn't have. But the fact that he volunteered it for Violet, cheerfully, apparently, made my stomach twist. Still, when Rena called and offered to take me and Violet dress shopping together, I agreed. I wanted to believe we could be something resembling a family. That I hadn't been completely replaced. They picked me up on a Saturday morning. Rena was chipper, complimenting my jacket. Violet was already talking about the spa appointment she had booked later that afternoon. We arrived at Lillian and Company, this elegant little boutique in Missoula with gold-framed mirrors and soft ivory lighting. I'd never stepped foot in a place like that. The attendant, a sweet woman named Margot, helped me pick out 3 dresses. I felt nervous. Like I was being graded. Like I had something to prove. I slipped into the first dress, a mermaid-style gown with delicate lace at the sleeves. I loved it. It hugged my curves in a way that felt flattering, not shameful. I took a deep breath and stepped out. Rena looked up from her phone. "Oh, that's interesting." Violet blinked. Yeah. It's cute." I stood on the pedestal, trying not to shrink. "I like it," I said. Then I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Well, someone's feeling bold." I turned. My dad. Max standing in the entrance, hands in his coat pockets, like he'd just stopped by on a whim. He looked at me slowly. His expression is unreadable. Then he tilted his head. "Maybe we should look for something that hides your hips." I froze. For a second, I thought I'd imagined it. Then he chuckled. Not sheepishly. Not nervously. A full, dry laugh, like he'd made a clever observation. Violet giggled behind her iced tea. Rena looked at the floor. I didn't say anything. I stepped down from the platform, walked back into the changing room, and shut the door behind me. I sat on the little stool, still in the dress, and stared at the floor. My vision blurred. The tears came fast, hot, and helpless. I tried to breathe. Tried to tell myself not to cry. That it wasn't worth crying over. But I did. And no one came in after me. No knock. No gentle voice. Nothing. When I finally stepped out, they had already moved on to browsing veils. I told them I had a headache and needed to go. Rena offered to call me a rideshare. I declined. That night, I told Milo what happened. I still don't remember what I expected him to say, but he looked at me like I was a person who deserved more. "You're not overreacting," he said. "I think." "I don't want him at our wedding," I replied, surprised at how calm I felt. "Then he doesn't come," Milo said. Just like that. And I knew he meant it. I didn't sleep much that night. It was one of those nights where your mind plays the same scene over and over, slower each time, as if maybe a different angle might change how it happened. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe he didn't mean it that way. Maybe I was being too sensitive. But then I'd remember the tone in his voice. The smirk. The way he laughed. And the worst part? The silence that followed. No one came to check on me. Not Rena, not Violet, not my own father. It was as if I had never left the room. As if I hadn't mattered enough to be missed. The next morning, I had a message from my dad. "Hope you didn't take things too seriously yesterday. You know we were just joking." I didn't respond. Later, Rena texted too. "Kala, don't make a big deal out of this. You know how Max jokes. He didn't mean anything by it. Let's just move forward, okay?" I read it 3 times and then closed my phone. It felt like the kind of message someone sends when they've already decided your feelings are inconvenient. I spent that Sunday at the farmer's market with Milo, trying to distract myself. We didn't talk about it much. He knew I was still sorting it out in my head. But that night, as we sat on the porch with mugs of chamomile tea and watched the stars blink quietly into the sky, I finally said it. "I don't think I'm just hurt," I said, staring into the dark. "I think I'm grieving." Milo turned to me. Grieving what? The version of him I still hoped existed. And that was it, really. I wasn't grieving the man he was that day. I was grieving the dad I kept waiting for, the one who would one day realize he'd lost me and be sorry. But instead, I got a man who laughed when I cried and expected me to take it as a joke. That week, I told my mom everything. We hadn't been especially close since I moved in with my dad all those years ago. But she listened without interrupting. You've always tried to carry everyone else's weight, she said quietly. I think it's okay if, for once, you just carry your own. I wrote the email a few days later. It was short, direct, and as kind as I could manage. Dad, I've spent a long time trying to make space for you in my life, but I realized lately that I've been doing all the work. What happened at the bridal boutique hurt me deeply, not just the comment, but the way it was handled afterward. I'm choosing peace for myself, which means I won't be including you in the wedding. Take care, Kala. He didn't reply. Rena did, of course. She always replied. This is so unnecessary and cruel, Kala. Your dad was trying to be helpful. He bought Violet's dress because she asked. You never even gave him the chance. You're being childish and vindictive, and it's breaking his heart. I didn't answer her either. There was nothing left to say. A week later, I blocked her number. In the weeks that followed, things settled into a strange kind of stillness. There were no angry phone calls, no pleas to reconsider. It was like my dad decided that if I wasn't going to play the role of the daughter who made things easy, then I wasn't worth engaging with at all. It was sobering. But it was also freeing. For the first time in a long while, I stopped performing for people who made me feel invisible. Milo and I kept planning the wedding. My best friend, Liza, came down from Seattle for a weekend, and we spent an afternoon making DIY centerpieces and laughing over wine. I ordered my dress from a boutique in Helena that didn't carry designer labels or judgment. The owner, a woman named Marianne, had been through a divorce herself and said she hadn't spoken to her dad in over 10 years. Sometimes, she said as she helped zip me into a tea-length lace dress that made me feel like I belonged in my own skin again, the hardest part isn't cutting them off. It's realizing they already cut you off, you just didn't want to believe it. I took the dress home that day. I didn't tell anyone else about the decision to uninvite my dad. No big announcement, no confrontation. If anyone asked, I just said we were keeping it small. That was the truth, anyway. The only one who didn't get the memo was Violet. She texted me out of the blue a few weeks before her wedding. Hey, just wondering if you're still not talking to Dad? He's been really down. You've always been kind of emotional, but this feels dramatic, even for you. I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't know if she truly didn't understand, or if she just didn't care. Maybe both. I didn't reply. The following week, Milo and I drove out to Glacier to finalize the site for the ceremony. Standing on the ridge, the wind playing with the hem of my sweater, I realized I hadn't thought about my dad for an entire hour. That felt like a milestone. Later, in the car, I turned to Milo and said, "Do you think people can ever really see the damage they've done?" He kept his eyes on the road. Some people do. Others can't afford to, because then they'd have to change. And that takes more courage than most people have. That stayed with me. Back in Helena, wedding gifts started arriving. Friends I hadn't seen in years sent cards and handmade quilts. My mom booked a hotel room for the weekend and offered to help set up the ceremony site herself. In those quiet moments, I realized something. The absence of someone who should love you doesn't leave a hole if you stop standing around it. You build around it. You find joy elsewhere. You stop pointing at the empty chair and wishing it would fill. One day, about 2 weeks before our wedding, I got a package in the mail from Missoula. No note, no return address. Just a small cardboard box with my name written in my dad's handwriting. Inside was a vintage silver locket. I recognized it immediately. It had been my grandmother's. My dad's mom. She used to wear it every time we visited her in Butte. She died when I was 17, and her jewelry had quietly disappeared from the family after her funeral. I'd asked about the locket once back then, and my dad said it had gotten lost. But now, here it was. In my hands. Polished, in perfect condition. No explanation. I sat on the floor in my living room for almost half an hour holding it. Turning it over in my palm. It wasn't an apology. But it wasn't nothing, either. I didn't know how to feel. Milo came home from the grocery store and found me there, still holding it. He sat next to me, waiting for me to say something. "It's from him," I finally said. He didn't ask who. He didn't need to. "Do you want to respond?" I shook my head. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "Not if it costs you more than it gives." That night, I tucked the locket away in a small velvet box. I didn't wear it. I didn't throw it out either. I just put it somewhere safe. Like a memory I wasn't ready to deal with yet. The days leading up to the wedding moved quickly. Our ceremony was small, less than 30 people. We planned a picnic-style reception with wooden tables draped in linen and wildflowers that Liza and my mom picked up from the local co-op. We had local wine, homemade pies, and one of Milo's co-workers made our cake, a lemon raspberry two-tier with dried florals pressed into the buttercream. I cried when I saw it. Not because it was fancy, but because someone made it with care. Care was a theme, I guess. So many small, quiet acts of care. Friends flying across states just to be there. My old neighbor from when I was a kid mailed me a handwritten letter with a $20 bill and a note that said, "Treat yourself to something special. Your dad would be proud, if he wasn't too busy being in a hole." Even the officiant, a woman I'd only met twice, teared up during the rehearsal when she read our vows. "You two remind me of my parents," she told us afterward. "They started with nothing but respect. And that was enough." It's strange how sometimes, the people who show up for you aren't the ones who are supposed to. And the ones who are supposed to just don't. A few days before the ceremony, Violet posted a video on social media. It was a wedding prep vlog, clips of her trying on shoes, her dad helping her hang string lights at her venue, Rena fussing over floral arrangements. My dad was in nearly every frame. Laughing, fixing things, holding Violet's hand when she looked overwhelmed. She called him the best man in my life. I don't think it was meant to hurt me. But it did. Still, there was something different about how it hurt now. It didn't feel sharp or humiliating. It didn't leave me gasping. It just confirmed what I already knew. I wasn't part of that world anymore. Maybe I never really had been. And strangely, that realization brought relief. The kind of relief you feel when you finally stop knocking on a door that's never going to open. When you stop asking someone to prove they love you the way you need them to, and start accepting the love that is offered, fully and freely, from those who do. I didn't cry watching that video. I closed it after a minute, turned my phone off, and went back to tying ribbon around the mason jars for our centerpieces. That night, Milo and I sat on the couch, our dog curled at our feet, and he said, "You know what I've noticed? You're starting to smile without hesitation again." I looked at him, not sure what to say. "You used to smile like you were waiting for someone to take it away." And I realized, he was right. The morning of our wedding came quietly, like a gentle exhale. The sun was soft through the pine trees, and there was a crispness in the mountain air that made everything feel sharper, more alive. My mom made coffee and scrambled eggs while Liza curled my hair. We played music, low and acoustic. Something about the simplicity of it all made me feel grounded, not nervous. No drama. No tension. No last-minute phone calls from family trying to force someone else's expectations on me. Just calm. When I stepped into my dress, I looked at myself in the mirror and thought, this is what peace feels like. The dress I chose was nothing flashy. No crystals, no corset, no dramatic train. Just a soft ivory gown with a square neckline and flutter sleeves, fitted at the waist and falling in a gentle A-line. It framed my body exactly the way I wanted it to, not hiding anything, not apologizing for anything. I didn't think about my hips. I didn't think about what my dad would have said if he were there. I thought about the way Milo looked at me when he saw me for the first time. His whole face softened, like he was seeing something sacred. "Wow," he said, quietly. "You look like everything I've ever needed." That's the kind of thing you remember forever. The ceremony was everything I hoped for. The wind rustled the trees gently while birds chirped just beyond the clearing. We stood beneath a wooden arch my mom and Milo built together, wrapped in eucalyptus and wildflowers. Everyone we loved was there. Everyone who loved us back. After the ceremony, we took photos under the cliffs. Liza handed me a handwritten card from a few coworkers who couldn't attend, and Milo's uncle made a toast about loyalty and choosing your own family. There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. But it was later, at the small reception under string lights, that the most unexpected thing happened. Violet showed up. Not with our dad. Not with Rena. She came alone. At first, I thought maybe she'd mistaken the date, or that someone had invited her behind my back. I saw her standing awkwardly at the edge of the tables, holding her purse like a shield. I walked over. Calmly. "You weren't invited," I said, not angry, just tired. "I know," she said, her eyes darting everywhere but mine. "I just wanted to see it for myself." I said nothing. She exhaled like it physically hurt. "He didn't even ask about your wedding." "Not once. After I posted the video. He just said, Violet's big day is coming up. That's the wedding that matters. Like you didn't exist." Still, I said nothing. She looked at me then. Really looked. "I used to think you were just dramatic. But I saw it. These past few months. I saw how he picks. And how he punishes. And I guess I thought I was safe because I was the favorite." I waited. Let the silence stretch. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "You deserved better." I nodded once. "I know." Then I turned and walked away. That was the revenge. Not yelling. Not throwing a drink in her face. Not forcing her to leave. Just letting her stand there and feel the full weight of what she came to find, that I had built a life that no longer needed their validation. That they weren't missed. That their absence didn't feel like a hole anymore. It felt like a gift. She left before dinner was served. Quietly. She didn't say goodbye. And I didn't watch her go. A few weeks later, after both weddings had passed, my dad sent me a letter. It wasn't an apology. Not really. It was 4 paragraphs of vague excuses, a little performative regret, and a closing line that said, "We're still family, and I hope one day we can move past all this." I didn't respond. Instead, I mailed the letter back to him, with the same vintage locket he'd sent me. No note. Just the locket in a padded envelope with the return address crossed out. I don't know if he understood the message. I don't think it matters. Because I've stopped trying to make myself legible to people who choose not to read me. I've learned that revenge doesn't always look like justice with a capital J. Sometimes it looks like healing without them. Sometimes it's your smile getting wider while there's falters. Today, our wedding photos hang on the hallway wall of our new home in Bozeman. There's a black and white one of me laughing, eyes closed, Milo's hand brushing my cheek. Every guest signed a wood-burned sign with our names and the date. It hangs by the door. We're expecting our first child in March. When people ask me about my family, I tell them the truth. My mom's incredible. My husband is my best friend. And I have a sister I used to know. That's all I say. That's all I need to say. And every time I catch my reflection and see my hips, I smile. Because they're mine. And they carried me here.